Yeah. So thank you everyone. I have to first thank Ranbir for reaching out to me and asking me to do this workshop on mobile phone photography. So the instruction that I received was that most of the members here in Hyderabad, they are mostly familiar with mobile phones and photography, and not may not be so much with DSLR. And before I start, I have a confession to make. I am primarily um, a DSLR or a mirrorless photographer. I haven't done much mobile phone photography, but then the principles of the mobile phone photography or the DSLRs is basically the same. So I'd like to start this presentation with a giving you an understanding about the limitations of DSLR and the limitations of mobile phones, what the differences are, and then and how we can use these aspects to improve your mobile phone photography. I'll start with the very basic about how to set up your mobile phone cameras and how to you use these setups, small tips to improve your photography instantly, and then we'll go to a little bit about the artistic elements of photography, like compositional aspects and things like that. And then as I said, I am like primarily a DSLR photographer, so I'm into wildlife photography in a big way. But whatever I'm going to share today, most of the pictures that I'm going to use in the slides are my own, and most of them are taken with the DSLR. But then let that not bother you. The principles are going to be the same, whether it's you're going to capture it with your mobile phone or with the DSLR. So let's start with the agenda of today's presentation. First, we're going to talk about the types of cameras that are available with us right now, how they are different, and how these differences impact the final outcome of these cameras, how to go about understanding your smartphone cameras, some of the basic tips, and then we'll move on to the creative or the compositional aspects of taking pictures. So most of the pictures which I use in the compositional section are my own. So I hope you find them appealing. So without further ado, let's just get started. So if you look at the different kinds of pictures that are available, we have like an entire gamut of devices. On the extreme right, we have the mobile phone cameras, and then we have the drone cameras, the micro four thirds, the crop sensor cameras, the full frame cameras, the medium format cameras. So the main difference among these different devices is that the sensor size is very different. So the mobile phone cameras today probably have the smallest sensor, and then a drone cameras probably the next bigger, and so on and so forth. So so this is very critical to understand that your mobile phone cameras, the sensor size is very small, and because of which it affects the photography in a very specific way, which we are going to see in the next slide. So mobile phone cameras, as you are all very well aware, it's very lightweight and convenient. It's very simple. Unless you are going for a very high-end smartphone cameras, it's very affordable. But the main problem, because of its smaller sensor size, is that the images that you can capture with your mobile phone cameras becomes like when you're taking it in a very low light situations, like early in the morning or late in the evening. If you zoom into the pictures, you can see that there are a lot of, it's quite noisy. There are a lot of grains in those pictures that you take it in the low light situations. And the file size also, typically your file size is like 3 to 5 MB. Whereas like the DSLR, the minimum file size what you can get is around 20 MB or higher. So the latest DSLR cameras are giving the full frame cameras are giving like 45 megapixel or higher. So how the file size is critical. Like let's say you want to print out these images. If you are just printing them out in a typical like 4:6 or 5:7 print size, 5 inches by 7 inches print size, or 4 inches by 6 inches print size, it doesn't really matter whether you're taking it with a mobile phone or with a DSLR camera. But if you want to blow the images, you want to have like a huge 4 feet by 8 feet, 4 feet by 6 feet picture that you want to hang it in your hall, then it is always better that you shoot it with a camera which has like gives you a bigger file size option. And again, like the next constraint with the mobile phone cameras is the interchangeable lenses. So typically you are pretty much stuck with the lenses what you get, which comes as a package with the DSLR cameras. Of late, there have been lenses, third-party manufacturers which are manufacturing these lenses, which you can attach to your mobile phone itself. You can actually clip it on and use it for like some specific purposes, like let's say telephoto or a macro. So it is possible to change lenses in the mobile phone also, but then the options are very limited. Whereas like DSLR and the mirrorless cameras, the options for changing the lenses are very, very high. So so these are the main differences between a mobile phone camera or a DSLR camera. So when we are focusing on a mobile phone photography, I want you to go in with this kind of an understanding, because we need to understand what the limitations are, and then we can see how we can overcome these limitations. And with respect to the image quality also, there are differences in how like a mobile phone captures an image and how a DSLR captures an image. So if you look at the lady on the left, it was taken with a mobile phone camera, and the lady on the right, it was taken with a DSLR. Same person, same background, same everything. But then the image taken with the DSLR camera, what you can see is the background is beautifully blurred, giving a very cinematic effect to the image. Now, it is possible to right now the mobile phone cameras are also improving with every version, and it is possible to produce a very similar kind of an effect as with a DSLR right now. Latest iPhone cameras are very, very good in giving you like very pleasing cinematic kind of image output itself, like Google cameras are very good. Even the Samsung devices are extremely good with the output. But then there is always a difference. So I've exaggerated the differences here, but this is something that I'd like you to know. And and also if you can see the statue also, the left image was taken with a point and shoot, and the right image was taken with a DSLR. So again, a DSLR image looks to be better, but then again, as I said, the point and shoot, because of the artificial intelligence that is getting built in, the various lenses that are getting incorporated, the flashes that are getting incorporated into the cameras, the difference is actually becoming lesser and lesser every passing day and every passing model. So, but as of now, there is a difference, and the difference is quite obvious to the eye. First of all, before we get into the techniques of like how you can make great images with your smartphone cameras, there are a few things which I'd like you to do. Some of them are very obvious, some of them not so obvious. So you know, to set up a level playing ground, I'm putting it out in the open. So for your understanding and then for your information, so you can choose which you want to do. So the first thing is like, when you want to take an image with your mobile phone camera, the first things that what you have to do is very necessary to do is like clean your lens. You might clean it with a microfiber cloth, or you can clean it just like wipe it with your shirt or dress, whatever, before taking an image. And the reason why we have to do that is like a lot of times because we have to handle the camera or the smartphone with our hand, the lens element sometimes gets smudged because we have to take in and take it out of our pockets. And then as a result of it, what happens is like the images what we shoot with the cameras becomes very blurry. So you can see the image on the right. So the left extreme before cleaning, how the image was. So it is looking very, very soft with a lot of the trees getting smudged. Whereas like after cleaning, the same camera produces like a much cleaner looking image. So the number one thing that should have been very obvious, but then sometimes it's not. I'm putting it just out there so it is on top of your mind. So the number one thing that you need to do before shooting is please clean your lens with a microfiber cloth if it is available, or just with your clothes if it is microfiber cloth is not available at hand. So the one thing that I want to mention here is like when you are cleaning with your cloth, like your dress or something, if the material of your dress is very abrasive, it can impact your lens. It might result in some scratches, and it might result in a poor image. So always better to clean it with a microfiber cloth, which is meant for this purpose. So actually, the other second tip which I'd like to take is I'd like you to turn on the grid lines on your camera app. Sorry. Okay. Was that a question? Okay.
I think someone was unmute. We'll take questions at the end of the session.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So when so the grid lines are a very important part of the composition. Grid lines are nothing but like, there are equally spaced horizontal and vertical lines dividing the frame into 9 equal parts. And we'll see the importance of it when we come to the compositional aspects of the photography. But then I'd highly recommend, at least when you're starting with your photography journey, that you can turn on these grid lines. And the turning on the grid lines is fairly simple. So an Android phone, you basically have to go to the camera app, go to settings, and the grid lines of your settings, you have to push it to the right. And the extreme right, you can see to help. So just bear with me for a few more slides. So this is how you would turn it on Android. Whereas I think in iPhone, I'm not an iPhone user, but I looked it up on the internet to see how the grid lines can be turned on. It seems you have to go to the settings, go to camera, and then the second or third, I think, menu bank, you have an aspect called as composition, where the grid you have to push the button to the right to turn it on, and you can see that the grid lines are turned on the image on the right. So you can turn the grid lines on an iPhone or Android phone, whatever you have right now. and you can use these grid lines to improve the framing of pictures. And I think most of you people might be aware, but I'm just like putting it out there. So if you have like, let's say you're focusing on like a group of people, and you don't want to focus on the person on the front, you want to focus on the person on the background, you just have to touch with your hand to the person on the back, and then the image, the camera immediately shifts the focus from the person on the front to the person on the back. So similarly with the different kind of subjects, whether let's say if you're focusing on a flower and there are some leaves in front of it, you just have to click on the flower with your finger, and then the camera focuses on that. Sometimes the camera is able to pick up the subject on its own. Sometimes it needs a little bit of help from us. So touching the subject which you would like to focus is how you do it. And similarly, like when you touch it, two things happen. One is you can select the area where you want to focus, and by keeping your finger pressed, moving up or moving down will increase or decrease the exposure or the brightness of that particular subject. So I think you will have to manually do that to improve the brightness or the darkness of the subject. Depends on what you're trying to focus. Let's say you have a subject which is under a very bright background, the subject becomes dark. So you have to click on the subject, move your finger up to make the subject brighter, or move your finger down to make the subject darker as you desire. But that's how you change the focus and adjust exposure. So again, I think zooming in, zooming out also should be pretty obvious. You just have to use your fingers to zoom in or zoom out. You have to basically pinch it to zoom out, spread your two fingers apart to zoom in. Sorry. So it's very intuitive. So it's very easy. But then the problem is when your camera does not have like a optical zoom. It only has like a digital zoom. So the pictures what you get from a zoomed in picture is not going to be great. So if you want to like take a printout, or if you want to like blow it up, it's going to look very, very pixelated. So it's always better to move closer to the subject and take a picture rather than using the zoom feature in your mobile phone camera. So but in an unavoidable situation where you're like let's say focusing on a wild animal and you can't really approach the wild animal, there zooming in or zooming out might really help you where the situation really calls for it. But in a normal situation where you're just photographing people or flowers or other kind of subjects, it's always better to move closer and take the picture instead of zooming in with your camera. Because as I said, most cameras only have like a digital zoom. They don't have like an optical zoom. So I don't recommend zooming in unless like the situation really calls for it. Okay, and as I said, like I already shared that in a low light situation, like early morning or a late evening, you always have a problem of noise, and then there's always like some shake because the shutter speed becomes very low because it's trying to capture as much light as possible. So in these situations, it always is better that you can use some kind of support. Like there are different kinds of supports available in the market. Some selfie sticks can double up as a tripod. There's a gorilla pod. different kinds of stands in which you can use it as a support to take a picture. So in low light situations, I really recommend that you use some kind of a support to take a picture so that it doesn't become blurred. So this is about camera techniques, and today, like when a lot of people are taking pictures on their mobile phones, the main media of where it is being consumed is like they're posting to social media, like let's say like Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. That's where the most of the pictures are being shared these days, and it's always better to understand, like the aspect ratios or image sizes, what each social media app uses. So in Instagram, if you want to do a post, the aspect ratio is 1:1 or 4:5. So these are the two aspect ratios for an Instagram post if you want to do. And if you want to do a post on Facebook, the aspect ratio is 2:3. So and you can also do 2:3 horizontal also. But I like to share a tip here that if you want to get your images to get more and more likes, always choose the vertical format instead of the landscape or the square formats. The reason why is that in a mobile phone screen where like the other people are seeing your post, your picture is likely to take the most of the space, in a mobile phone device. So vertical image is always like more desired, like it will stay on the screen longer when they are scrolling. So it is likely to get more likes when compared to a wider format like a 16:9 or 1:1. So I am very active on Instagram. You can check out my Instagram handle. It's balaji.p.b. So you can see that most of my posts are either 1:1 or 4:5. Whereas like if when you're doing stories or Instagram reels, you choose 9:16. So so depending on like where you want to share the pictures, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, you have to either crop the image accordingly and make sure that the subject, when you are cropping these images, make sure that the composition or cropping is not disturbed by the aspect ratio of these different social media platforms. So I hope that was helpful. Let's move on to the compositional aspects of the photography now. We are done with setting up the camera for a smartphone camera. We'll just move on to the compositional aspects of the photography. So we are now going to make great images. All of you are going to make great images. I have like no doubts about it. So I'm going to tell you like some generic rules. These are not necessarily only for mobile phone photographs. These are for any genre of photography, whether it's wildlife, landscape, street photography, wedding photography. All these different genres, they typically follow the generic rules that are there. These are just guidelines. These are not hard and fast rules. So, I mean, if you feel that these are too constraining, you can ignore these rules. If you feel this situation demands a better kind of a framing than what the rules allow you, please feel free to break these rules. These are just guidelines. These are not fixed rules. So one is the rule of thirds, where like let's say if you're photographing people, if you like look at any image for a particular image, it's always better not to place the subject of that image in the center of the frame. It can either to be one side of the image, either to the right or the left, but never in the center. And in this case, like this is a picture of me standing against the backdrop of my farm. So in this case, I want to emphasize my farm as well. So I've included a part of it, the background. So I am in the right of the image and my farm is in the background. And if you divide the image into 9 equal squares with the help of 2 horizontal and 2 vertical lines, placing the subject in one of those lines. In this case, like the second vertical line, I being the subject, I'm being placed in the second vertical line. So if you place a subject on one of the lines, either the horizontal line or the vertical line, it will like draw the viewer's attention. And you know, people have found out that the rule of thirds is a great way to compose an image. And you have to place the subject either at the one of the lines or at the intersecting point of these lines. So I'll show more examples of how you can use the rule of thirds to frame subjects in different scenarios. Again, this is a vertical image where, if you can see, like I'm placed at the bottom quadrant of the image, and I'm placed at the intersecting point of the vertical and horizontal lines. So it makes for a pleasing picture. Again, like you can apply the same kind of rule for landscape images also. I think this is a picture of the Forbidden City in China, the picture that I took. Again, if you look at the try to compose the image, the interesting building which is at the top of the hill, that's placed at the intersecting points of these, the horizontal and the vertical line. So it makes for a very interesting picture. And again, like if you are like, let's say, shooting wildlife, again, you can use the rule of thirds to frame the picture. You can see that the eye of the animal is placed at the intersecting points of the horizontal and vertical line. And again, it is not, the photograph is not placed in the center of the frame, rather at one of the sides. So you can use the rule of thirds to frame different kinds of pictures. So another aspect of photography is to use leading lines. Leading lines are nothing but, you know, any feature, let's say like a row of trees, roads, railings. You can use these railings to draw the viewer's attention towards the subject. So if you look at the picture, this is a picture of me against backdrop of Niagara Falls in the United States. In this case, the hand railing serves as a leading line, drawing the viewer's attention towards the subject, which is me in this picture. And then you can see the Niagara Falls in the background. And if you see the image on the right, I think this is an image photographed by me in Japan. So here, like you can see like several leading lines. So the road, the canals along the road, the row of trees, all point towards the subject of the image, which is the doorway in this case. So you can use leading lines to frame, to draw the viewer's attention towards the subject. You can use railroads, you can use pathways, you can use roads, you can use railings. but then it has to draw the viewers towards the subject. Let me give you another example of leading line. So this is the Nagasaki, I think it was Hiroshima, I think. Sorry, Hiroshima site where I think the nuclear bombing happened. So this is the building, that's the only building that was left standing in 1946. Rest everything was destroyed. So that place they have converted to a museum. So in this case, the building is the point of interest or the subject in this picture. And you can see the bridge acts like one of the leading lines, the bank of the river, the other bank, all these sort of lead towards the subject. And this is really helped the framing the picture in a pleasing way. So whenever you have like leading lines, please use them. And they really help help make your picture stand out. So this is actually a picture of my daughter. So these are two pictures taken a few seconds apart. One of the important aspects that most people often we forget is that when we get to the eye level with the subject, like let's say the subject in this case was my daughter, she was very small. And so when you take a picture at above eye level, she looks very small. Of course, she was small. So, but then when you get at the eye level with the subject, the entire picture changes. So, in my opinion, getting, it's very actually quite simple to get to eye level with the subject, particularly when you're capturing images with mobile phone. You just have to bring, if you're shooting with a mobile phone, just like drop it. You can just like, you don't need to get down yourself. You just can bring the mobile phone down and take the picture, framing the subject at eye level. So it's very simple to do it with a mobile phone. But whereas with the DSLR, we actually physically have to get down to the ground level. So when you get to eye level with the subject, what happens is you're able to transport the viewer of the image to the world of the your subject, and then the kind of perspective it does, it gives is like it gives a very pleasing result. And it's not only true with people, it's also true with like wildlife and birds in this example. So like the picture on the left is a bird called sanderling, which I had the good fortune to take in the greater run of Kutch, the beach called Mandavi Beach. So we were lying flat on the ground and took this picture. And the tiger was shot in, I think, Bandipur in Karnataka, where again, I think we were on the safari vehicle. Safari vehicle was below, and there was like a small undulation on the road. So we were able to get to the eye level with the subject, which was the tiger in the example. So getting to the eye level really creates a huge impact on the picture, and which is able to transport the viewer of the picture into the animal's world or the subject's world. So I highly recommend that you try to take images with eye level shots, particularly with when small kids and other people are concerned. So another reason why we should try to take an eye level shot is that, let's say like you're trying to shoot a bird standing up and the bird is on the ground. So the background distance between what between the subject and what forms the background is very short. So it doesn't make for a very pleasing picture. And when you get at the eye level, when you're lying down and taking a shot, the distance between the subject and what forms of background increases, and you are able to get like a very pleasing bokeh. For example, if you look at the previous image where the bird and what forms the background, the subject distance is huge, and it's beautifully blurred out, giving like a very cinematic kind of a look to the picture. Another important aspect about the eyes of the subject is that sometimes in some angles, what happens is the eye reflects the light source, let's say a tube light or the sun or the moon. So getting the reflection of the light source can really improve the picture. For example, this is again a picture of my daughter, just like separated in a few seconds. One was where like my daughter was looking down, and one she was looking up. You can see the glint in her eyes. So it really gives a lot of life to the picture. And in my opinion, the picture on the right, even though both are of the same subject, the picture on the right is personally appealing to me, but then it's a very individual choice. We call, in photography terms, we call this as the catch light. So if you are able to capture the reflection of the light source, it makes for a very pleasing picture. Again, in the wildlife, again, the same thing applies. Picture taken few seconds apart. The first image, the bird is looking down, and in the second image, the bird is looking towards me, or at least in my general direction, where the reflection of the light source is captured very well. You can see that glint in the eyes. So the second image is more appealing to me personally when compared to the image on the left. So another important aspect in photography is that negative space. So we should always try to, negative space is nothing but, let's say like there's a bird or an animal which is moving in one direction. So we should always like frame the image in such a way that you should always provide some space in the photograph in the direction where the animal is looking, or in the direction where it is flying or moving towards. So in photography terms, we call this negative space. And this is true of when you're photographing people doing stuff, like, let's say moving, walking or running, or even looking. It really improves the picture. And in fact, if you look at it from like if you divide the picture into 9 equal grids, you can see that the subject will fall in along the one of the vertical lines, so, or the intersection of the vertical and the horizontal lines. So negative space really improves a picture. In fact, it's part of the picture storytelling also. I just put directions in which the bird was looking in this case, and here the direction towards which the bird is moving. So if we try to frame the subject entirely without giving the negative space, the picture will look very cramped. Where it looks like the bird is very cramped and doesn't have space to move. So it doesn't make for a very pleasing picture. So as I said, like it is not always possible to, particularly where fast flying birds like the swallows, it's not always possible to compose everything perfectly in the field. So what we can do is like take the picture, crop later for composition. So that is always possible. So this was the original picture, and we have cropped it later to improve the composition of the image. So this is, we can always do it. But when your final output goes out there, keep these in mind. Like let's say when you're posting on social media, if you have like very well composed images, it's it's more likely to appeal to a lot of people, and you'll get a lot of likes and comments for those pictures. So it is always better to get it right in the field itself, and I'll tell you why. Because like the image on the left, it was like a shot in DSLR. The image on the left is 24 megapixel. The image on the right, which I cropped to improve the composition, is 1.76 megapixel. So it's the image on the right is very small. So if I have to blow it up, I probably can't do it because it will look very pixelated. So we try our best to get it right in the field itself. Okay, another important aspect when it comes to photography is like, how do you place the horizon lines? Whether you want to emphasize more on the foreground, or you want to emphasize more on the background. So as I said, like when you look at the rule of thirds, I'd always recommend you to place the horizon line either at the bottom third of the image or the top 1/3 of the image. So if you look at these two images, you can see that the horizon lines are at the bottom 1/3 of the image. I'll show an image where the horizon line is at the top 1/3 also. So this is another image where the horizon line is at the top 1/3. So this also works, but never keep the horizon line at the center of the image. It's not very pleasing so it confuses the viewer whether because they are confused whether you want them to focus on the foreground or the background. So if you want to focus on the foreground, place the horizon line on the top 1/3. If you want to draw their focus towards the background, place it on the bottom 1/3. Yeah, and another interesting compositional aspect is like always look for frames. So I think like when you go to Taj Mahal or any of these monuments, I think Hyderabad has a lot of them. All these tourist guides will give you a typical picture where they'll use one of the entry arches as one of the frame to take a picture. So this was a picture of Taj Mahal, which was taken in one of the entry arches. And I think it was, the next one is Aurangzeb's tomb, I think, I'm not sure. So here again, I think on one of the railings, they had like a hexagonal pattern through which we try to frame the picture. So whenever we are going to monuments, we can try this. It makes for a very appealing picture. And again, I think even in the natural world, we can always look for frames. So in this case, where there was like, I think, crested hawk eagle, it was naturally framed by these two diagonal branches. So I immediately, I think when I saw this bird, this was in Chinnar in Kerala, where I photographed this bird. So when I saw this frame, I really had to take this picture. So it looks very appealing. And again, I think the leaves and the branches in this case make for a natural frame for the bird on the right, which is a Himalayan bulbul. I think I photographed this in Dehradun, in Uttarakhand. And I think the final aspect which I want to cover is like always look for interesting colors and patterns. And what will happen is like this was photographed in Kailashanadar temple in Kanchipuram near Chennai. This is one of the, I think, the oldest Dravidian style stone temples that is available in Tamil Nadu. And they had like a very interesting temple structure there where like there were like 7 different smaller temples built within the temple premises itself. Each of these smaller temples were for one of the queens of the king. I think it was the name of the king was Narasimhavarma Pallava. So one of the, in this, like it has like a very repeating pattern, but then in one of the temples, the gopuram is missing, or it has been damaged. So immediately the viewer's attention is drawn towards the one of the structure where the pattern is disrupted. So we can see that in wildlife also. This is a photograph which was taken by me in Kaziranga National Park, and we have like very interesting turtles there. I think this is the Assamese roof turtle. They have like a roof-like structure on their back, and you can see that all the I think the one on the top is the mother, and all the others are the kids. There's one particular small turtle which is like looking in the opposite direction, which immediately draws our attention because it looks funny and drawing an attention. So whenever you have like some interesting patterns or like interesting colors which make a pattern, should try to frame it. It will make for a very pleasing picture. So I think that's it. Close to an hour now. That's all I have for you for the mobile phone photography. I know it's like this is just the basics, but then if we have any follow sessions, I'll be very happy to take them.